Good evening and welcome to the 22. I'm your host, Glenn Davis. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to thank everybody who submitted comments about last week's show. I appreciate that. And secondly, the phone lines are open, so if you do want to call, and I didn't mention that to Kim-Shree, and with a question or comment, my apologies for that.
That's okay.
Please feel free. And with us tonight, we're going to discuss public education and issues surrounding public education, as we often do on this show. And with us to do that tonight is Commissioner Kim-Shree Maufas for the Board of Education of San Francisco. And we have a bunch of issues to talk about, which I know many of you viewers have heard the common theme, because we've discussed these for the past 4 months. So let's jump in, and let's start with truancy. And we've talked about truancy in the past, of course. It's in the news because of the policy that the district attorney has introduced about prosecuting parents of chronically truant students, most identifying with the elementary students, because obviously they feel that kids aren't just not doing what their parents don't want them to do in elementary school, that there's some role in that the parents will play. But I don't necessarily looking for comments on that, but I'm more curious about what the Board of Education is doing about truancy. Is there policies on the horizon? How does it look?
Well, we actually have a Stay in School coalition that's working with the school. That is the school district's sort of management organization within our district that deals with truancy and staying in school and any issues that surround that, and whatever the broad range of whatever the reasons might be. And so we look to them first because they're working directly in that area to help advise us on what policies would support their work. How, and I can certainly comment a little bit on what the district attorney is doing, because as I've mentioned to you before, you know, she's looking to thwart potential crime. And we all want that. You know,
we want a safer community.
We want a safer community, we want a safer city, and we definitely want our young people to be doing all the things that they need to be doing to have a successful future. So part of her work around that is to address chronic truancy, because yes, it is a crime, and by the time it becomes chronic, we want to know where our kids are if they're not in school, and are they in areas of high crime, and particularly at the time that those crimes are being committed, you know. And if they're just bystanders, we don't want them to be victims of crime. We want them to be safe as well. And so I understand her impetus for starting this policy, but also understanding that it's very serious, and she's taking a very drastic but necessary move. She's also working with us, the school district, and particularly partnering with the superintendent to make certain that we implement all the possible pre-steps before it gets to her, where she has to act.
Because we're talking like 12% probably of the kids are chronically truant. Is that about right? Because I think the paper said something like 5,500, and there's like 53.
So it's around that number. A lot of those young people are in elementary school, so that's a different question. You know, we know that possibly it's not of their own choice. There's some other factors involved that may involve parents. So then it's how do we support families around that? And she was adamant about being supportive of our San Francisco families and making certain that they had all the support that they could receive from the city side, but also from the school district, to help make certain that their young people, their children, are in school. So that partnership versus adversarial relationship is what I see it as, and I'm grateful that it looks like that. And I got that information from a discussion with her, and I look forward to discussing it more with her probably in the upcoming weeks.
So it's really like, I may get a note saying, Glenn Davis, your child has been truant for 12 days.
Correct.
You know, this is not appropriate. You're not helping your child, and X, Y, and Z.
Or just explaining all the issues that happen around truancy that statistics have, you know, traced back to a truant child, or you know, children that have been truant. Exactly, and all the things that society has to bear, or our community has to bear because of that truancy. But then to indicate that these are some of the steps that will happen, but also here's some help for you. So there's also a helpline that's connected to the district and how we can offer services before we get to that, again, end step that she has to take.
Right.
Always, always, always offering help and assistance and support for families and students to transition them back into school.
Right.
That speaks. I wish that would actually speak louder than the I'm going to prosecute you portion,
right.
Because there's so many ways that you can be helped first before we get to that. And people aren't really hearing that. They're hearing the threat first. They don't see all these mechanisms that we have set in place as a district, as a board, as a city to help parents and help students. Right. So it's not that I was out for so long, I don't think I can get back in. Now I'm just being tossed back in and I don't know what to do with myself.
Right, I'm lost.
I'm lost.
So as a commissioner, you'll be kind of monitoring the progress of this?
I look, not just monitor, I hope to be an integral part of that conversation.
Right.
And in that partnership.
Right.
So we're talking the same message to parents that, hold on, let's cut the fear factor and figure out how you can get the help first, because I think the fear paralyzes people and they don't know what to do. And I think they may move in the wrong direction or may look at their child in a more of a punitive way when, as a parent, they can be helpful.
Right.
And there are answers there. But again, the fear factor makes it difficult to move in a way that's resourceful for you, yourself, your child, your family, and your community.
Right. So another piece of that, personally, that does make excellent sense. So with all the immigrant families in the city also, I mean, I'm sure that's another part of the conversation that you'll want to make sure that, these people know those steps and, are, the extra help that's needed for them.
Exactly.
Will be there as well.
So I think a huge level of our communication has to be for immigrant and newcomer families, especially into the school district, because it's just a whole new set of systems that they have to learn.
Right.
Parents and children, and then try to move together fluidly for success. So we definitely have to be very careful and very particular in how we support our immigrant families, so that they understand that no, it's not punitive already. It's really support, and have them understand how they can access the support.
Right.
That's key.
Right.
That's key.
What about a parent that comes or sends you an email and says, Commissioner Maufas, I would not put my child on a Laidlaw bus because there are things on Laidlaw bus or the school bus. I've been at the meetings and I've heard that, the accusations. But say they don't want the child on the bus, so they're not sending their children to school. To
school because of the bus situation.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's certain variables. We can say that. So I didn't want to, knock on Laidlaw so much. But.
Right. So let's take that as an example circumstance. There are barriers that parents have rationalized that I just can't do it. It's just not beneficial for my child. I don't feel safe, or whatever the circumstances are. It's enough that I won't send my child to school. That is the time to access the district and explain that.
Right.
That's the time to let us know. So number one, we can look at those situations and say, we have these examples. Yeah. And this may be an isolated incident. And even if it is, we want to look at it and find out, what has the partnership with whoever it is, whether it's the school, the bus, the muni, the community, the neighbor, the pathway that the child is getting to school. Right,
that's a big issue, right?
Right.
We're going across gang territory.
Exactly. Whatever that pathway that the child has to get from home to school, whatever the barrier is, we want to figure out what it is and what appropriate steps or what appropriate entity can help us support. And I don't even know if it's a solvable problem, because sometimes it's a bigger societal problem. Right. And how we can work with everyone together to get the kid to school. And it may be some workaround process, but it may not be just particular for that kid. It may be a whole bunch of children that can't access the school because of this issue. That's the barrier. But until we know about it, it's just us guessing that you're not sending your kid to school or the kid is not getting to school. We don't know why. We just know that from home to school, it's not happening. And if we haven't had that communication step, we can call or we can send out letters, but that's our step. We need the reciprocal step with saying, well, I don't send my kid to school because of this. I don't send my kid to school because of that. this happened one time and my kid came home with a bloody nose, or this happened and my kid said they were really frightened. And we just need to figure out what that barrier is, and then figure out
how to solve that. And what are the
collectively, how to solve it.
How to solve, as you said, maybe impossible, but
how to
minimize.
work with whatever the situation is.
Right. A question about, the school board and being a policymaker and having, being one of the governors of the public education here in San Francisco. And I mentioned this earlier, that what is it like to have other elected officials who are on the periphery of governing public education and policy setters themselves kind of jump into that arena?
Right.
Is that must be kind of it's an interesting situation to be in, I would imagine, right?
Well, I'll tell you my reaction that I said earlier. It's hard not to get offended.
Right.
It's hard not to get offended that you're not perceived as the person to address that first.
Right.
It's really difficult when I hear, and I'll just be plain, an elected official come out with a statement where I understand that we haven't been consulted or figured into the process.
Yeah.
Or really maybe one of us board members has, and that was just a heads up. Heads up, I'm going to announce this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's a tough pill to swallow.
Right.
I mean, and it took me a while to understand, like, why am I offended by that? Well, that's because the people of San Francisco believe that these 7 board members have been put in place to do that work.
Right.
And at minimum should receive the consultation deference from the other political entities in this city.
Right.
I do that. I definitely feel that if I know something is coming around the pike, especially from the school district, that may affect other electeds, that's a personal conversation that I feel we as school board members should be having with our other elected officials, and in partnership with running the city, and in partnership with the school district being a part of the city and county of San Francisco. Right. Bottom line, it's just a respect.
Yeah.
And it's just so, we don't step on each other's toes, and we don't feel that someone's trying the one-upsmanship.
Right.
What's that about for us? We're all here to do a job for all the citizenry of San Francisco. That's my goal.
The basic principle is to make the city better for everybody.
Exactly.
For whoever is elected.
Right. And if somebody's got a great idea, fabulous. How can I support you in that great idea?
Yeah.
Not, that you called me, or not that I heard it on the radio. It's the same thing most parents probably tell their kids. If you're coming home with some bad news, I certainly want to hear it from you first.
Right, exactly.
Before I hear it from the school, before I hear it from the neighbor, before I hear it from somebody else. Consult with me. Consult with us in partnership with what's happening in the city. We want to be a part of it, and we want to be supportive.
Right.
Not say, oh, we're not going to support that, or no, we don't like that. We know you're moving that way. Let us know ahead of time. Since you know about it way ahead of time before the public announcement happens, I can't imagine that people just think of something the night before and decide to go with it the next day. That kind of respect and integrity speaks so well of what you think of your other electeds.
Yeah.
And whatever realm that they're working in. You may differ in a lot of other areas, but just for the general well-being of the city and helping, as you said, working better for the greater good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Do you think it's changed a bit? Because I remember last year when you were running, you said how, you wanted to build that community, and there was this sort of everybody was in their separate corners. I think, particularly after the John Sweat issue, and I think that I've kind of seen, it seems like the electeds are working better together. Is that something, I don't hear so much of the district should be doing this and this is the data they should collect. Or certainly the tone has changed for many of the other electeds.
I think the number one tell to that we're working well together is we are not in the news in a negative way every other day.
Right.
I mean...
Because it used to be.
Oh my gosh. It was like, at least once a week you can be guaranteed about a story about the San Francisco Board of Education versus so-and-so, or versus such and such, or amongst themselves. And literally being the most hilarious show on television.
It was almost tabloid reading.
Isn't that scandalous?
Yeah.
I mean, so already that speaks to how I think, and yes, I'm going to say the new board members, the tone that we come in with, but also that I think the board members that remain want that to change.
Right.
That's not a legacy that they want to leave with.
Right, to remember as. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want any of that. As they leave, it's like, oh, thank goodness they're gone. They were such a tyrant, or they were such,
They were so kind of pig-headed, I guess.
Exactly. So it's really, the sense of what I want, at least how I want to be spoken about.
Right.
And I think that's clear of other board members. And I also think that's other folks in the city as well.
Yeah.
When they speak to us, my goal is and hope is that again, we don't have those announcements that are a surprise to us, but also in partnership with us.
Right. Because it could only enhance, I think, in general, if it gets to a point where another elected official could call you up and say, here's an issue. I was wondering maybe if this was something that you had thought about. Could we potentially co-author a policy that you could present?
Oh my gosh!
In certain issues around.
Exactly, those things are huge. Those things are great, and whether other elected officials want to do policy work, but even whatever their area is, I've got this thing and I've got to go over to my community, and I would love to have a school board member come over there with me.
Right.
We'd love to have other folks doing different levels of work in San Francisco, and actually our state representatives as well, come and be with us at schools and to be seen doing things like that, because that shows that we are working in partnership at all levels, actually, together.
Yeah.
So that
creates that continuity. Which we were talking about before we came on, was the importance of continuity. So I want to, we had outlined a bunch of things. I want to talk about, because we've got literally less than 6 minutes now.
Oh my God, okay.
It goes very fast.
Let's
but I wanted to talk about school enrollment, because that's another big issue, particularly for those people with kids.
True.
And as we all know, the Supreme Court this fall had announced that race could not be a factor based on lawsuits presented by Seattle and I think Louisville, right?
Correct.
Which put a bit of a hitch in the giddy up of the Board of Ed here in San Francisco, because the board.
I think we were contemplating it. Sure.
Yeah.
So that's
what now, I guess.
Right. So that's a discussion that we'll have to have, and I think we want to incorporate the community in that discussion. So we have some movement in the district. We have a new superintendent.
Right.
We have 2 new deputy superintendents. So and I think it's important to have them in place. We have one starting I think they'll both start November 1st.
Right.
So one has been with us for some time, Myung Lee, and we have a new one, Dr. Tony Smith, coming from the East Bay. And
Myung has worked his way up through the ranks. I think when I first met him, he was director of policy and planning, and then he was CAO, and
correct.
But he's a good man.
He's a good person, and we need that person who really is hard on the numbers and the finances with the district.
Yeah,
that's a good read, and we need it. And I think, honestly, Dr. Smith is that community person. He completely gets it. He's that academic person. He completely gets it. So there's that balance.
Yeah.
And with Carlos sort of leading the way, and it's sort of a new, fresh look.
Yep.
And there's a lot of work to be done around that and the movement. I think together with our new leadership, we should be going out to the community to have that discussion. We've already had the discussion with the SIR program, and
can you just state what the SIR is?
So SIR is, what is it? I know the RR is retention and recruitment.
Oh, right. It's the whole student.
It's the student and retention. Right, which we did this whole, I think, 9 months of going out to the community, and many of your viewers may have participated in some of those community meetings, and they were over and over, and it was with so many of our community partners, but also folks in the community chiming in about enrollment. I want my kid in the elementary school around the corner, but the high school doesn't matter so much. Or actually, I would love, because I need, my older kids to come home for the younger kids, I need them closer to home. Right. All the different aspects of, why school choice is working or not working. Because we'd have complete choice.
Right.
And what about it was working and what about it's not working.
Right.
So now that we have the new leadership and now that we have the Supreme Court decision, I think we need to go out to the community and have that discussion again.
Right.
And figure out, are we going to continue with complete choice?
Right.
And tweak it a little bit? How do we even add anything, any of the factors that might help decide diversity? Because for us in San Francisco, we value diversity. And is that going to be meaningful
for
other people? How do we have that discussion? So
Right.
that's a talk that's yet to be had.
And then there's that huge issue of schools are segregated. So whether this,
Right.
what is presently done, the lottery system,
Correct.
is even as effective as people thought it was.
Right. I don't. So I think clearly it's not. So something's up.
Yeah.
You know, and why is it? You know,
Right.
if we could say that folks were really using the system as the system should have been used, would we have these same outcomes? We don't know, because we know some folks aren't using the system as it should be used.
How can
right?
we get them to use the?
How can we? And do we have time to find that out? You know, kids are progressing, they're growing, and parents need results, such as kids either near my home, kids where they're going to be in school, and this is where everybody's going to be satisfied. It's there are too many variables involved. So again, I think that's the time where we need to go out with the community and have that discussion again, and then make a choice and set that forward.
Right.
So that's an upcoming, very imminent discussion.
Right. Because it's very important, I think.
Oh yeah,
Very
we can't wait on it.
Yeah. So we only have a minute left. If
Wow.
you believe that.
No, I don't.
It's very fast.
We have like 4 or 5 different topics.
I know we had a bunch of stuff. So quickly, JROTC. Do you think that will be?
I think absolutely the JROTC needed the extra year. I talked about that on the campaign trail. I talked about that when I first got onto the board. I hope to be more of a partner in that conversation, because I think I see both aspects of it. I understand and respect the board's decision that they made, and I definitely want a program that speaks to the leadership development. I think we have leaders in the program that are amazing, and I would like to see them continue on in the school district. That may be getting them some credentialing. I don't know how that'll work, but that's an ongoing discussion.
Right. Okay. Thank you for coming. I hope you come back sometime.
Please invite me back, and let's have more time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back. We can delve into some of those issues.
I